Hello, good evening to everybody. Um, let's learn my Chasidus. I want to say two things. Number one, the Shir is a schus for the Fuhr Shlemer for Abba ben Risha, that is my father. He went through a minor something today, and the Mitzvah Hashem, it should be to the Fuhr. Second of all, this morning we finished Kufites. We did the last Shir. Um, I'm so delighted. I'm so sameach, Baruch Hashem, that we did it. We did it. I've been doing the Rebbe's Kapitel probably for 20 years, and I had no idea how Kofi Test was going to happen. And if there had not been quarantine, I don't think it would have been realistic. I really don't think the Eibishter made quarantine for me to teach Kofi Test, but everything, the Hashgacha of the Eibishter is such that every detail of every effect, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, that comes from an event is precisely precipitated by the great Creator. So certainly part of the Hashgacha Pratis allowed us to complete this undertaking. And Baruch Hashem, we finished. I'm saying this because I'm still be celebrating it. I'm also saying it because starting next week, the Maimed is going to take the place of the Kufya Test, which is the Maimed, except for Wednesdays, is going to be in the morning, not in the evening. So the Maimed will be around 10:30 a.m. And on Wednesdays, I'll have to figure out how I'm going to do Maimed instead of in the evening. And there'll be one class fewer per day. I'm not replacing the Tilim class as long as the school year is going on because I've been really overworked. So it'll be a little bit easier for me. That's my plan. Now, tomorrow, I don't know yet whether there's going to be a class. I highly doubt it. I think that tomorrow's Maimed class will not be because I'm going to be preoccupied in other areas. But today we're going to finish the fourth class of this Maimed Kitavei Wal Haaretz, which is Pasuk B'Chokei from Tafshin Yud Gimel. Now, we have very little to read. Perek, short little perek, not so hard. Avoidudik. But I have an obsession. And my obsession is to learn the Maimed, right? The Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Zogazin, our Rebbe said in my Mechsidus. The truth of the matter is where it comes from doesn't matter. And Rav Farana Sipur, my Shverz al my father-in-law, Moshe Nemenov, hat immer erzählt von seinen Taten, from Reb Nissen. And the way he told me the story, you know, it's hard to understand, but the way he told me the story was that Simchas Torah Tafresh Peches, the Rebbe Rayas Friedrich said my Mechsidus. And the next day he left. The next day the Friedrich left Russia. The Reb Nissen, who I don't know if he was married or he was still single, was not old. He was born in Samachdala, and this is Peches. He was probably less than 24, but he was already a mashgiach. He was for the cheshuvim. And he asked the Frierdiker Rebbe if the Frierdiker Rebbe could leave the Maimed that he said behind, the Maimed of Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, whatever Maimed was. So the Frierdiker Rebbe told him to get somebody to copy from different bichlach, a piece of chassidus from here, a piece of chassidus from here. And I suppose that after whoever it was made these pieces, these copies, these different shtikalach, the Maimed was constructed. In other words, the way the Maimed was built by the Frierdiker Rebbe, he took a piece from his father from here, a piece from his father, and they made a new Maimed out of it. And I'm assuming the Frierdiker Rebbe added words of kesher, but I don't even know that prat. That's not how the Shver told the Maisa. Later, the Frierdiker Rebbe asked Reb Nissen which bacher he gave the Maimed to copy. And Nissen told the Rebbe whom he assigned this task. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, "Good." Quote, "Val nish jeder da wissen wie a Maimed stellt sich zu neuf." That's the lashon that he used. It's good that he gave it to this bacher and to a different bacher, because not everybody has to know how a Maimed is constructed. That's Atkan Divrei Arav. That's the story. Now, I can't understand how it's possible that the Frierdiker Rebbe had time. The next day he left, had time to show Reb Nissen which shtiklach to take from which bichlach. L'chayda, the Rebbe was taking the bichlach with him, and then have time to reconstruct the maimer. He had l'chayda the Aces of Keshe, which I don't know how he did that. The night before he left, I just don't see how it's realistic. But the pshat in the maimer, which I also am not sure about, is that when you hear a maimer from a Rebbe, it's Kiddush Nasa Misinai. Then you find out that it's a shtickle from this maimer, a shtickle from this maimer, and the Rebbe Rayatz, who said the Maimer, Kemat has no Chiddush. It's really the words of his father, the Rebbe Rashab, which he reorganized, and you can lose your appreciation for the Inyan from Gile, from the Elokus Shebedover. And even if a Rebbe repeats a Maimer word for word from his predecessor, it's a new Gile Elokus. So the Rebbe said, Nit jeder da wissen, wie a Maimer stellt sich so. It requires a certain kind of person to see how a Maimer is constructed, and to retain his sense of grandeur for a Maimer Chassidus, for a new Maimer Chassidus. Now, in today's generation, that's all gone. It's all gone because everything is printed, and every Maimer any Rebbe ever said, you can trace it all the way back to the Alter Rebbe. And this Maimer is based on a Maimer in the Hemshech Ayin Beis, also a Bechu Kaisai Maimer from Tafresh Ayin Hey, as I've said a number of times. And I actually looked at it, and I didn't look closely enough to be able to tell you what and if the Rebbe is adding anything very ikroiniistic. But whether this is the word of the Rebbe or it's the word of the Rebbe Rashab, what is certain is that this long Maimer, or this Maimer that we've stretched out, maybe it's not so long, I think it's only 8 pages, over 4 classes, about Parsa, is unique because it doesn't only talk about how Parsa is a necessary tzimtzum to allow creation to happen on lower levels, but Parsa is a chibur. It's a medium, it's a vehicle through which one ascends from earth to heaven. Right? The mashal is Big Day Kahuna. That's the mashal, right? Based on desire. A kohen wears clothes. If a kohen is not wearing those clothes, so it's a terrible einish, like it says in Chazal. It says in Psukim, it says in Chazal. And the Rebbe mentioned that none of them died because they were mechusa begodim. Because the kahuna has to do with the levush. The service, or the word that the Rebbe used, the shimush, the being mishamish, the melech, requires levush. The melech is here, the kohen is here, the shimush requires levush. Now the levushim create a distance between the shamish and the melech. They create a distance. But on the other hand, they also create a proximity. In other words, wearing the right clothes creates a distance between you and Hashem, but also creates a closeness between you and Hashem. You're able to come close to the Eibishter in a way that's healthy and constructive and useful, without it destroying you, or destroying the world, and so on. So the Rebbe says this is true even of Parsa, right? Parsa is a very severe example of tzimtzum, and I told you there's different misholim for the mashal of Parsa, including the mashal of a sack, a lavush sack, a sack which you put a person in a sack, so it's material from which you can make a suit, but when you put him in a sack, he's immobile, he can't move. A Parsa is a very severe tzimtzum. But we're seeing this severe symptom of Parsa, not only as a means of hiding a lakus to bring it from a higher level to a lower level, but to allow the lower level to ascend to the higher level. In other words, the Eibishter created a hishtalshelus. And the hishtalshelus involves a lot of steps of concealment. This concealment allows the creation of a lower and a lower world with a lesser and a lesser godliness. But it's also creating a ladder that allows reascent from the lower levels to the higher levels. So the kohen, who is mishamish the melech, is not only satisfying the melech's needs, but he's able to approach the melech. And he's able to approach the melech because he's wearing these begadim. And because of these begadim, even though superficially these begadim create such a distance between him and the melech, they're the means through which he's able to connect to HaKadosh Baruch. I guess the vart is A tzimtzum hides. Why does it hide? Because if you get too much, it'll be not good. That same tzimtzum allows you to approach step by step that it shouldn't be destructive. But in this moment, we're not talking about tzimtzum, we're talking about parsa, which is a severe and extreme case of tzimtzum. But the lowest worlds can connect to the highest worlds because the tzimtzum of parsa in the Lashon of the Rebbe is a chibur, from the bottom up. Let's do this. Let's start in the bottom of Kuf Nun Daled, which we learned yesterday, and I want to repeat it. Uklol is ha'inyan, the idea in general. Shaideya parsa, because there is a screen, which we're calling a beged, a lavush. Actually, is chiber aliyah b'tachtin, it connects what's higher and what's lower. Meaning to say, it's not only that because there's this garment of parsa, a lakus can be reduced. B'shine hamahus, as I explained in yesterday's class at length. From Esesfiris Agnuzis, Esesfiris Agluyis, from Moichin to Midas, from Atzilus to Biyah, but also Chibur. Because of this parsa, you can go from Biyah to Atzilus, from Midas to Moichin, from Esesfiris Agluyis, Esesfiris Agnuzis. And the Rebbe says, well, the example for it is the yin of Moshel. By the way, I'm thinking now that I made a mistake. Lavush sak is not a Moshel for parsa. I said this before, I said it yesterday. Lavush sak is a Moshel for klipa. So I have to take that back. The Mishalim for Parse are the Moshel of a Moshel, the Moshel of Asis, Bilti Wisdom. It's a mistake on my part, because a Lavush Sak is not a Lavush. It doesn't let anything through. I made a mistake, and if I could, I can go back to the previous classes and correct it. As I'm talking, I'm realizing that I made a mistake. Parse is a thick garment, but something comes through. And just like something comes through to create something less, it allows something through to create from the less more. And the Rebbe says, the moshel of a parsa is a moshel where you're trying to understand something. And because you can't understand it directly, you're trying to understand it indirectly. The Kasher HaChocham Gadol B'Yesir, one who is most intelligent. Reitz Alash B'Elakotin B'Yesir wishes to teach something to someone who's much less intelligent. Es HaSeichel Shalei, the wisdom of this super intellectual. HaSeichel Shalachacham HaGadol, the wisdom of this great intellectual. So now, if he wants to give him his wisdom, so that this younger student has it, but the younger student is never going to understand it as this incredibly wise man understands it. So he gives him a very reduced form of that original wisdom. Now the student has it, and theoretically he can extrapolate backwards and come to what the teacher really meant, right? Mashus is an example. But of course, if it's a mashal mechuvan, you can extrapolate backwards from the mashal to the nimshal. Allows the student, the recipient, to grasp, to hold the original seichel, the mashpia. Although he's grasping the teaching of the teacher through the mashal, it's in such a way that the seichel of the teacher is available to him in the mashal. That means he's understanding a very reduced version of what the teacher is teaching, but it's the same teaching. And because it's the same teaching, somebody, either him later in life or another person who's going to hear from him, the martial version can extrapolate backwards and eventually come to understand what the teacher meant. I've told this to you before, that the Rambam writes, he brings a pasuk, that the Torah was written adas hahamoin. The Chumash was written to speak to the populace, to what do they call it, the masses. In other words, most people are on the lowest level of seichel or on lower levels of seichel. Torah speaks to simple people. And if you're smart, through the external form of the Torah, you can understand deeper and deeper and deeper. So the Eibishter gave the Torah to us on a level that it has a very broad appeal, on a very simple level. And he created the possibility for us to be more intelligent and to see past the surface of it to what's beneath the surface, to understand things on a higher and a higher level. So the point is that we should come to understanding it deeper. But the communication is through this medium of great concealment. The same is true by the Eibishter, that the simple idea of parsa, according to Kabbalah, is that through it, a supernal light comes to a much lower level. Meaning to say, Bishini Hamahuz, the Av, Sham Shachi Adea Parsa, even though what's communicated at a lower level is so much lower, that's of a different substance. It's the same light that's been allowed to, so to speak, quantum jump to a whole new level. And of course, what's more important to us today is not the measure of tzimtzum, but rather the measure of possibility of the reversal of it. The idea is the allegory, the analog, comes from the idea itself. In that marshal, it's a precise marshal. You have the nimshal in its preciseness. The Rebbe has mentions in the Siches that there's something called a marshal mechuven and a marshal sheini mechuven, a precise marshal and an imprecise marshal. What's the difference between a marshal mechuven and a marshal sheini mechuven? A marshal mechuven is that the marshal came from the nimshal. Like it says in Tanya Perek Gimel, nishtal shalomehem. Right, the esekeches hanefesh are a marshal for the esespheres, because the esekeches nefesh come from the esespheres. So the Rebbe says a marshal sheini mechuven means you give a marshal. It's useful to understand an idea, but it's not precise because the marshal did not come from the nimshal in its shadish. So when you have a marshal sheini mechuven, you cannot extrapolate backwards from the marshal to the whole nimshal. But when you have a marshal mechuven, which is a pnimius dika marshal, that means a marshal where the idea that you're learning, the analog, comes from the nimshal in pnimius anyan. So then it's a perfect marshal. If it's a perfect marshal, you can go backwards from the marshal to understanding the nimshal. The parsa comes from above. Through the medium of the parsa, a very high light comes to a very low level. But I want to add that the point of this all is, and therefore you can, so to speak, reverse the parsa. You can go backwards through the parsa to reach the higher light that was before. Now, the idea to me is so it's so hard for me to understand it, and it's certainly hard for me to appreciate it. In other words, what you have to understand is that because the tzimtzum is more dense, that extra denseness of tzimtzum becomes an extra support for going backwards and going back up and reaching higher and higher levels. So Eibishter hides himself so that we can exist, but the nature of his hiding is what accommodates us getting closer and closer to him. You have to go through that process because of our own limitations, but we can extrapolate backwards to, so to speak, reach the Eibishter, reach the Melech in the mashal of the Kayin Melech of the Zeh. And in Perek Hey, the Rebbe is going to describe this. We have three parsois, right? Three mishalim for that Melech v'Kayin, right? The way it says in Zeh. From Asasiris Agnuzis to Asasiris Agluyas, from Meichen to Midas, and from Atzilas to Bia. Now wait. In each one of these three, you have the idea of tzimtzum to go from Asasiris Agnuzis to Asasiris Agluyas. Tzimtzum to go from Meichen to Midas. Tzimtzum to go from Atzilas to Bia. But if you're going to reverse it, if like the Rebbe said in the Maimed, after the Mishamish is a mal the chesodin of the Melech, he gets a schar, and the schar is that the king gives him more, that allows him to get closer to the king. The reversal of that is that the one below can travel through this parsa to get closer to the king that's above the parsa. And l'choyre, that's what he says. Avoida is not the avoida of tzimtzum, but the avoida of the reversal of the tzimtzum. I think that's the word. The hine. The Rebbe establishes as a foundation that serving Hashem involves passion, love Hashem, love and fear. Like it says in this without Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem, the neshama cannot, the mitzvahs in the Torah we do, cannot ascend. There's three levels of Avos V'Yirah. There's three different levels of Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem. And these three different levels of Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem are a yid below, coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch. In one madrege, he's crossing the parsa between Asasiris Agluyas and Asasiris Agnuzis. In another madrege, he's crossing the parsa between Midas and Meichen. And another madrege, he's crossing the parsa between Bria and Atzilas. Now, if you look at what the Rebbe says now, you'll realize that this is on a much lower level. He's not describing, Elam Hasein Sof and Elam Atzilas and Elam Bia. But in Avoida, it's similar. In other words, the three Avoidas the Rebbe going to describe is not between Atzilas and Ein Seif, and between Midas and Meichen of Atzilas. But they parallel in terms of the toichen of the Avodah, the nature of the Avodah. Yes, was a gimel efani aveda, two types of aveda. Even now, the first kind of aveda is ahava b'bechinas utzad liba. He loves the Kadosh Baruch Hu, but it's a love that comes from the yechida, the utzad liba, the will of the heart. So when you love the Eibush at a level of the will of the heart, this is reversing the parsa that created the worlds that separate Ein Sei from Atzilus in avoid. And Shakol Mitzvah here we're talking about a Yid whose entire reality is a Kayim is in the alien to satisfy the will of HaKadosh Baruch. Yes, and the reason is Shein Mitzvah Atzmei Klal, he has no self-identity whatsoever. Elakol Mitzvah Elakayim is an alien, his entire reality is filled with the will of Hashem. In other words, here's a Yid who's achieved the total his battle to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, total bittul to the Eibush, that his reality is a rotzen to serve Hashem higher than Seichel. He's not fighting with himself. He's not bending himself. The idea of fighting with yourself and bending yourself is when there's some entity or identity which is separate from the Eibishter, and therefore has to be bent to establish a closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This will of the heart is be'efin she's called mitzvus. This is the entire reality of the person. Who in other words, that a Yid serves Hashem in the madrega of B'chol Meidach on an infinite level of Avodas Hashem. It's above all kinds of limitations. Even the kedusha, even the limitations of holiness. When you love Hashem on a level which has no limit, and using this love, who makayim teru mitzvahs, one fulfills teru mitzvahs. Hine. When you do teru mitzvahs using an abba which is b'chol meidecha, this person brings down a sarotzen shalamayla mishtalshos will move to avishtalshos. Shezeh, when you're in Eisa Mitzvah Shamakam, that Kayachal we're creating an Eibishter a new will, and you're bringing down that new will. Shepayam, the Rebbe says in Yiddish, Ed to if one achieves Bechinas Sarotzen Shalamayla Mishtalshos, that in the Eibishter there should be a will to a world which is higher than Ishtalshos. Let's translate the words Re'usa de Liba. Taich. Liba means heart. Ratzon means will. Will and heart to do different things. Because the heart is a midah, that means a measure. And the will is the whole neshama, it's an infinity. So the concept of Re'usa de Liba means that the heart is expressing something infinite. The emotions are expressing something which is not a midah, a measured emotion, but it's an infinite emotion. That's the taich of the words Re'usa de Liba. And the Rebbe says Re'usa de Liba comes from the Yechida, the Chol Meidech. So let's think about this. The Eibishter created a world, created us. How did he create a world? How did he create us? Through a parsa, by hiding himself. If and when a Yid is able to inspire in himself a love for Hashem on a level of will. A love for Hashem on a level of will means he loves the Eibishter, but it's not a measured love which comes from his mind, but it's an infinite love that comes directly from his neshama. He goes back through that parsa with which the Eibishter made him. But when he goes back through that parsa which the Eibishter made him, since he's going back through that parsa with the Re'usa de Liba, it creates a response, a reciprocation from heaven to earth, which is equal to what he's doing. He's going through the lavush, and of course the whole point of this Maimed is just like you have to have the lavush to have created the world, you have to have the lavush to come reconnected to the Eibishter. Since he's passing through this parsa on a level of Yechida, he's ma'eded l'mayla eisa mitena shamaka. Eisa mitena shamaka means you create a new will in the Eibishter. Usually we do mitzvahs, Hashem gave us mitzvahs, and we follow them. And when a person serves on Hashem on a level of eisa mitena shamaka, Hashem gave us mitzvahs, and we follow them. Exactly the same thing. But according to Chassidus, each time you do a mitzvah on that madrega, you're doing exactly the same mitzvah, but you're creating a new rotz. Because since you're expressing an ahav on a level of ratzon, which is above seichel, it creates a reciprocity from the Eibishter on that level as well. So again, if we're going to be loyal to the Maimed, which is what I'm trying to do, you're going to be loyal to the Maimed, we're going to say that I was created through a parsa. If I am able to muster in myself Avar of Re'usa de Liba, I cross back across the barrier of the parsa to reconnect to the Eibishter on the level of Re'usa de Liba, and then he gives me the madrega of Eisa Mitzvah Shomach. That's the first level. So in other words, there's a Yid who's serving Hashem in a level which is above his seichel, which in Hishtaltus means above Atzilus, and only because the parse is there, he exists. Only because the parse is there, he's able to go backwards through the levush of this parse and have a connection to the Eibush, the Liba, and then the Eibush is going to give him a new Ratzon based on his Eitzim Yisrael Neshama. The second level of this Hashem is Sha'av of a Yirabay Madei is Bonanus. A person has again love and fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it comes from the mind, from the seichel. This is emotions that come from the intellect. Through one's contemplation. Explained at length in Tanya and Chassidus. The person learns about Hashem and thinks about Hashem. Develop feelings for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, but these feelings come from the mind, not directly from the soul. Rusa the Liba, straight from the neshama. This comes from the seichel. Now, the chilur achimus sichliim technically is elam abriyim. Technically, more involved. The chilur achimus sichli means I'm creating emotions using my mind, which are not part of my nature, my personality. If I create emotions using my mind that are based on my personality, they'll be called the chilur achimu tivim. The chilur achimu sichli means I'm using my mind to create original emotions that are not part of my personality through the use of my mind. But look at the next words. In this level of the chilur achimu sichliim, there's two possibilities. Whether the emotions are stronger than the intellect that inspires it, or the intellect is stronger. This feeling comes from the mind. This is the joining together of the heart and the mind. Let's just finish. You create a unity of binyan azah, which I'll explain to you later on. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say something which is not said explicitly in the Maimah, but I think it's true. Obviously, I think it's true, otherwise I wouldn't say it. When the Rebbe says, Imamidas hein be'ez gabrus, Hashaseichelu be'ez gabrus, includes both the chilur achimu tivim and the chilur achimu sichliim. The reason I'm saying this is because the next level, he's going to speak about Ava Vayira Tivim, but he's going to specifically say that it's an Ava Misuteres. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm believing that what he's going to say in the next piece about Ava Vayira Tivim, Ava Misuteres is similar to what it says in Tanya perek Tezayin, that it's Machshava Teva Kadosh Baruch Hu Mitzarfa L'Maisa, or something like that. And because of what he's going to say in Eifen HaGimel, I'm going to assume that when he says in Eifen HaBeis, the Chilur Achimu Sichlim, it means both the Chilur Achimu Sichlim when the Midas are based on Seichel, as well as the Chilur Achimu Tivim, but the Midas are pronounced, are revealed, are felt. In other words, if you use your mind to arouse your heart, and the heart is actually felt, it's passionate, on a higher level, you're using your mind to arouse your heart to develop feelings which are not in your personality and nature. And then a lower level, it's you're using your mind to arouse your heart where you have feelings which are based on your personality and nature. I suspect that what the Rebbe said, Bein im hamidas hein be'ez gabris, or Seichelu be'ez gabris, includes both of these levels. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm strongly inclined that this is the pshat. Okay, but the Rebbe says in either case, this is Namshach from Bina Lazos. And let's talk this through. When the Eibush created the world, he made a parsa, a screen, that separates Kvayachol, the Moyach, from the Midas by the Eibush. That what comes to the world is Mahus Acher, it's only the Madreg of Midas, and there's no Moyach. In other words, one of the things Hashem did in blocking out Elokus to allow the worlds to be separate from Him is that Fayachal, the Eibishter's hashpah from his midas, is not connected to the moichin. It's a big tzimtzum. And the Rebbe says when a yid serves Hashem on a level where he in his life joins together his mind and his heart, he's creeping through that parsa in the reverse direction. And again, the vart is not only he's creeping through that parsa in the reverse direction, it's that parsa becomes the garment that helps him creep through the concealment in the reverse direction. That instead of the reality being where a person can have emotions for the Eibishter that are separate from the mind, he's having emotions to the Eibishter which are connected to the mind. And the way it works is azoi, 3 steps. Number 1, when the Eibishter creates us, so the parsa hides the moyach which is higher than what Nimshach lowers midas. Number 2, the yid serves Hashem in the reversal of that parsa, joining together his mind and his heart, using his mind to arouse feelings in his heart, whether his gabras is moich and his gabras of midas. And in doing so, he's using the parsa, the garment of the parsa, that originally was used to create him. He's now using the garment of the parsa to reconnect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And because he's using the parsa that separates Meichen from Midas to reconnect HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because in his avodah he's connecting Meichen and Midas, the hashpah that the Eibush is to give him as a result is Hamshachas Abina Lezo. In other words, the Eibush created a parsa of hiding. We climb back through that screen to reveal, and then the Eibush reveals. 1 is creation, 2 is Serusa de Latato, and 3 is Serusa de Leilu, which follows. And then the Rebbe concludes, the 3rd step of Avodah is the Kiyama Mitzvahs that Kabbalah says. You're doing mitzvahs because you accept the yoke of heaven. Just because Hashem said. This doesn't mean it doesn't mean that he has no feelings for the Eibishter. There's no feelings that Kadosh Baruch Hu does not ascend upward. As natural emotions which he teaches Ava Mesuteres. Because it is Ava Mesuteres, he stands in the Kabbalah Kaima mitzvahs to do mitzvahs. And then the Rebbe says, you bring Atzilus into Biyah, because Biyah is the world of Kabbalah Seil. Atzilus is the world of Meichen and Midas. The Eibishter created a parsa to separate the Meichen and Midas from Biyah. When you do the avodah of serving Hashem with the Kabbalah Seil, you reconnect the Kabbalah Seil to the Ava V'Yira, that's Nimshach from Atzilus into Biyah, the Yin from Midas. Now here also I want to say that there's 2 things. There's 2 separate things in terms of avodah. Okay? What are we saying? That there's a parsa, a screen. This parsa separates every kind of Gili Elokus, not only Moichen, but also Midas from us. And this 3rd parsa creates us in such a way that we have no intimate sense of Elokus, not on a level of higher than Seichel, not on a level of Seichel, and not even a level of Midas. Just submission. But in this submission, there's some kind of emotion, because there's no emotion in the submissions, but the emotion that we're experiencing is called mustard. It's a concealed emotion. So I want to make 2 suggestions. The first suggestion is very explicit in Tanya. The second suggestion is only a remez in the end of Perek Mem, in the Hagor. But I want to talk it through anyway. Okay? The first suggestion is Pashut. In Tanya Perek Tezayin, chapter 16, the Alter Rebbe talks about a person who's not able to develop full Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. He can learn, he can think, but he can't feel. He doesn't have enough openness, enough development, enough maturity to actually feel. But he can create enough feelings to help him control his actions. This is called Bilvav Chalasesi, enough lave that affects Asiyah. This is called in Tanya Machshava Teva Kadosh Baruch Hu Mitzaref Lamaisa, that even though it's only a thought, it's Hashem connected to an action. Right? When I taught this to my students, and I taught it for many, many years, I used to call it Abyssal Yiddish Hatz, the story with the Rebbe Rayatz and Hendel, Reb Hendel. It's a whole long story. The Nekudas HaSipur is that Reb Hendel told the Friedrich Rebbe, after davening Meideh for 5 hours, with Prius Nerois, he said to the Friedrich Rebbe that I should have understood the Haskalah that your father said. I don't have the chutzpah to demand it, but the father told stories, that the stories should not move me. This I have a right to have a taina, how come the stories don't move me? A little Yiddish Ahatz, everybody's entitled to. And this Bissel Yiddish Ahatz is not actual emotion. is just sufficient positive feeling towards the Eibishter that connects it to action. Because the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, what's in your brain does not affect your action. What is in your heart does affect your action. And Ava Mesuteres, which is called by many names, but one of them is Machshava, Teva, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Mitzarfa Lamaisa, where you have, it's called, of course, called Talumas Meichev Elibe. Talumas Meichev Elibe. Talumas means it's hidden. Tvuna, Eisias Ben Awatz. It's not full emotions, but it's enough positive feeling that connects the emotion to the action. So the Rebbe says the third level of avoida corresponds to the third parsa. And of course, understand that the avoida is the reversal of the parsa. The parsa creates the screen that separates, and the avoida creates the circumstance that uses the screen to reverse, to go through the parsa in the opposite direction. That instead of serving Hashem without any feelings, you're serving Hashem with feelings. But it's not full emotions, it's ava misateres. It's sufficient. As long as there's enough enough good Yiddish hearts to affect one's action is considered already midas. But it's Kabbalah sale. Kabbalah sale means the bottom line, I'm serving Hashem not because I'm excited, but because Hashem said. But I have sufficient emotional motivation to do it with a Kabbalah sale. That's the first shot, right? So let's talk it through, yeah? The Eibush declared that we're creating a screen. This screen cuts off and blocks that from a lakus to a world should not come any gili. Hashem is completely hidden. What's left over is only Hedorah. And a Yid serves him. And in serving him, he's not just overcoming the parsa. He's using the same garment to creep through the opposite direction. That his Kabbalah self should have a little bit of Yiddish hearts, not more. But that little bit, bissel Yiddish hearts, that the Chilur Chimu Tivim on a level of Musteres, Talumas Mechev Elibe, that he experiences is already a sufficient connection between Midas and his Kabbalah sale, that's the reversal of the pars. And because he's going through this pars in the opposite direction, and he's, so to speak, reversing the pars, by having sufficient Yiddish hearts to motivate the Kabbalah sale, so then it causes that the Eibusha should be mashpia in the world, Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. In other words, we creep through the pars in the opposite direction, so that the Eibusha should be mashpia to the world, not that the pars says Ma'alim Umasa, that the pars says Magala. That's my first shot in these few lines. But I want to say a second shot. And this second shot really doesn't say, but I want to say it anyway, because there's an Indian in it. To me, that's very, very important. When you learn Tanya, you know that Atzilus is Merkava, right? Atzilus is Gile Velakus. Bria Seichel. Yitzir is Teva. That means emotions that come from the personality rather than come from the mind. Yeah. What is the avoid of Asiya? There's really no discussion in Tanya of avoid of Asiya. This is a Tanya. I picked it up. It's a Tanya. The end of Perek Mem, in the Hagor, on page 110, Daf Nun Hayom at Beis, he says, Ayafilu ba'asiya b'yutzfilis de gedusha mokem mitzvahs ma'asiyas. It's the whole thing. So it says, and I want to talk about this. In Chassidus it's brought, I know, a certain eten, a certain ayam beis, that there's something called tomim b'maisav. Tomim b'maisav means a Jew who has no understanding of Holocaust, has no feelings of Holocaust, but has a sincerity. But the sincerity has a depth that makes his maisim full of life. It's not an emotional life, it's not an intellectual life, it's not a godly life, it's a submissive life, it's a tmimus. And it says in Chassidus that tomim b'maisav is musha shel yechida. That means very low neshamas, that are very unsophisticated, very simple, can have a sincerity. I think that this sincerity is like the Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, and Asiyah. It's not an emotion, but it's a sincerity that brings life into the action, and it also causes a parcha l'yela. And in the Tanya, in the Pnim, this is never mentioned, except for those two lines in the Hagor at the very end of Perek Mem. There's no other case where the Alter Rebbe explains the parcha l'yela and Asiyah, only in Yitzir and Bria. And I want to say that this is also the pshat of here, Kabbalah Seil with Ava v'yira tivim, Ava mesuteres. So bepashtus it means abyssal Yiddish hearts, right? Bepashtus it means talumas mechev elibi. But on a deeper level, perhaps it means there's no emotion, but there's a lebedekai because there's a tmimus. And I'm suggesting, again, this doesn't say in the Maimed that this is another way of understanding it. The bottom line is the Eibishter creates us to a parsa that makes us capable of doing mitzvahs at any chayas. And the reversal of that parsa is some type of chayas. And the word in this Maimed would be chibur. It's not only that you're overcoming the parsa, You're using the same shirt, the same parsa in the opposite direction to connect your actions to emotions, even though the Eibishter blocked them and cut them off. And then the Rebbe concludes, the Eibishter is mashpia through this parsa midas in Imbya. So the Rebbe is trying to explain all three of these parsais as, on the one hand, simtsumim to create lower and disparate separate worlds, but on the other hand, they're a garment for chibur to go back through those parsais and to bring it to the lower worlds, the giluyim that Kayachal, the Eibishter, hid from us when he created us, that they should be revealed in the lower worlds. And then he had the same kashra the whole time in the Maimer. Why does it work? Why should the Eibishter care about us? Why should the Melech care about the Kayin? He's beneath. And of course, the teretz is because the shadish of the past is higher than everything. Anam, however, since the purpose of which Eibishter created the world is that everything should come down into Biyah. So even though the Eibishter makes one parsa and a second parsa and a third parsa to hide and hide even more, and hide even more, the effort that reversing these parsas, Magia touches the in Yiddish. They're lying in the melech on the highest madeg hidden spheres, which is even higher than Atzilus. In other words, since the kavana of all three parsais is to reverse the parsais, and reverse the parsais by using the parsa as a chibur to go back in the opposite direction, the parsa between Ein Sof and Atzilus is reversed through the aved of Rusad Liba. The parsa between Moichen and Midas is reversed by serving the Eibishter in a way where the Midas are connected to the Moichen. And the parsa between Atzilus and Bria is reversed by serving the Eibishter with a Kabbalah Sel, which has an Abbas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. Why does it work? Why should the Eibishter take heed to our efforts to cross through the garment of the past in the opposite direction? Because that's why he made everything. Like he said in the class of yesterday, the day before, because the Sheilash of Yidden is higher than everything else. And by days, in so then, the 10 hidden spheres, which is higher than Atzilus, comes on into Atzilus, and comes on into Midas, and comes on into Biyah. It all begins with the Avodah of Kabbalah Sel. The implication is that Kabbalah Sel is the lowest Avodah, and it accomplishes all the Avodas higher happen because of the base of Kabbalah Sel. Because Kabbalah Sel happens down here. Now, L'cheira, the Rebbe is saying that the Kabbalah Sel is the source of all three parsa reversals. You have Kabbalah Sel with some Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem to reverse the lower parts. Then you have Mides, Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem, that you connect to Moichin to reverse the middle parts. And then you have the Avoid of Seichel and Midas being raised up to a level of Usad Lib, which is higher than Seichel, to reverse the third parsa. But it all begins with the first reversal, because everything starts in this world. That's the meaning of these worlds. The Kabbalah Sel. In other words, by reversing the parsa, which separates Atzilus from Bria, we can cause a reversal of the parsa between Moichen and Midas of Atzilus afterwards, and then cause a reversal of the parsa between Sfiras Agnusis and the Sfiras Aglois afterwards. That's the pshat in the Maimer. Now, one thing I want to say in closing, and that is that the Rebbe keeps describing the parsais as a medium, right, as a mechaber. It doesn't only affect the tzimtzum, it affects the reversal of that tzimtzum. What's the reason it works? Because what's Rebbe's lashon? Tachas hakavon is amshacha bebiyah, which to me sounds very. It's not the same, but it's connected to the b'min nimlach that we discussed in earlier classes. I want to add one other thing, and that is that in Chassidus you learn that the highest shadish is of the tzimtzum itself. Parsas of mitzamtzum, it hides. Parsas oisius, that are built in Mesuda, which are very effective hiders. But the klal is, the rule is, that the hider's shaydish is higher even than what it's trying to hide. In other words, the tzimtzum itself has a higher shaydish than the erish lifnei tzimtzum. The levush has a higher shaydish than what it's covering over. And I think that you could say that this whole business, that the parsa is not only a mafsik, but it's also a machaber, that you can go backwards through the parsa, is not only because the kavona of the Eibishter is that there should be a gil in the lower worlds, but because the shirish of the parsa itself is very, very high. And the avoid of a yid is able to reveal koiches from the parsa itself, which allows the parsa to serve as a medium, not just to hide the Eibishter, but to reveal the Eibishter. Okay, and this is the Maimer. Right, then of course the Maimon finishes that ultimately the lowest world should also have peace, and the key to it is avoid the Shei Shalom Tizah Sadecha, Shei Shalom Tizah Kamecha, as I taught you in the first year. Okay, so we're done, and I'm going to teach you a new Maimer after this. I'm planning to teach you the next Maimer also from Tafshin Yud Gimel, from Erev Shavuos. I forgot the name of the Maimer. Oh, here's a B'Shal Shogdimu from Leil Shavuos. Lil of the Shavuos, and we'll see how it goes. Again, I'm not sure whether there'll be a share tomorrow. If there will be, it'll have to be sort of last minute.